right, this is the second half. We're going to finish talking about the peripherals, the case, and the CPU cooler. This is mostly going to be like a cosmetics episode, or a cosmetics video. So I think this would be a good place. I think we ended at a good place yesterday to split this video in half. So I just need to click on edit part list. So this is my shown part list, and then I can call this person right now. Hello?
Yo, how's it going?
I'm doing good. Let me share screens.
For sure.
Start. Okay. So we already covered it pretty much everything in the build, except for the CPU cooler and the case. And the CPU cooler you don't have to worry about. Tyler will set that up for you,
Okay.
and he'll overclock your processor and all that stuff.
Okay.
It's more a matter of just looking through the CPU coolers I select for you and seeing which ones you like. And then if there's anything we want to do cosmetically because the case and CPU color changed dramatically, I can just choose like different colored RAM and a different colored motherboard and all that stuff.
Okay.
So I guess I'll start with the peripherals first. So the collection of peripherals are headsets, keyboards, and mice. Speakers are peripheral, but unless you're going to be making audio, making like high quality audio and working with really high quality audio, chances are you're not going to need speakers because most people just use speakers as like a testing unit to see
Yeah.
how things sound or when they don't want to use their headphones.
Hmm.
So there isn't really a reason to invest in high end speakers unless you're like making music.
Yeah.
Um, so let's see. And then I guess I can talk to Tyler about sound cards. Maybe
Okay.
not. We'll see. So anyway, the stuff I have favorited, by the way, all the computer parts that I have favorited, I favorited. I was looking at tier lists of hardware from Tom's Hardware,
Hmm.
and I favorited like all the motherboards that were in like the A tier and the B tier
Hmm.
because those were the ones that were good at overclocking. So I know for a fact that all the ones that I favorited are good motherboards when they work, but I don't know how good the quality control is on some of them, so I have to edit that out. Um,
Okay.
but so if we end up looking for a different colored motherboard, I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. So anyway, you have two general cosmetic options. I think the best way to go is either to get an RGB peripheral set that's all from the same brand because when you get it all from the same brand, what that does is it allows less. Hold on, I'm recording. It allows for less drivers and other various software to be open.
Hmm.
Um, like if you get a RGB Logitech mouse, keyboard, and headset, or a Razer or Corsair and all that stuff, you're only going to need to have one thing open in order
Yeah.
for like all the lighting to function properly. And I wouldn't recommend getting like a Logitech mouse and a Razer keyboard and a Corsair headset or something like that because then you're gonna have to download Logitech gaming software, Razer Synapse, and Corsair Utility Engine, and that's like to me that's like a waste of computer resources when you can just get all the same stuff.
Yeah.
So, the first thing I have to ask you is that I'm actually gonna go keyboard, mouse, headphones first. So for keyboards, um, do you need a numpad? Do you use your numpad at all?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay. So the options here. This is the mouse, not the keyboard. The options here in terms of RGB stuff is let's see. We can look at this. You can look at that. Actually, no. Hold on. Products, keyboards. So all these RGB keyboards I would consider like your options. Let me see if I can.
What is RGB?
Red, green, blue.
Red, green, blue.
Yeah, that's what it stands for. Because computers process lighting off of a scale of how much red, how much green, and how much blue you put in things. And if you've ever studied physics, this is how light works in the real world as well. It's not red, yellow, blue like in painting or other forms of physical art, where like if you combine blue and yellow, you make green. It's in regards to light. So and that which is through energy. So if you for example, if you combine red and green, you get yellow light. If you combine a green and blue light, you get cyan. If you combine a red and blue light, you get magenta. So if you've ever heard of CMYK, that stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, you know, which is like in between all those. So that's how light works in physics. So yeah, hold on. I need to. I'm gonna open this, but I'm going to blur out this. There was a problem. You're linking Facebook. Why not link the Corsair thing? I can talk to you about that in a second. I have the keyboard mouse headphones there.
Oh, okay, cool.
So what I was saying is that so you need a numpad. So this isn't an option. So these are your options. You have the Strafe RGB, the K95 RGB, and the K70 RGB from Corsair. And then if we go to Razer's website, store, keyboards, and then go to Logitech's. Oh wait. And then we go to Logitech's website. Oh wait, we're not going to do that yet. We're going to just look at keyboards. Okay. So the reason I'm not showing you like RGB, not RGB peripherals is because I feel like at the price RGB peripherals cost now, and how when you buy peripherals that are a certain LED color, like say you want a white keyboard, a white mouse, and a white headset, if they don't, even if they come from the same brand, there's a chance that the white will be like a different tone of white between your mouse and keyboard. And stuff like that bothers me personally, and I feel like it could bother you as well if you look at both of them. Like especially if like your mouse has a blue tinted white light and your keyboard has a red tinted white light, like that's going to be super or a yellow tinted white light, that's going to be super annoying. So and RGB lighting for the most part is pretty much even between all of the devices because they get the LEDs from the same manufacturer, like in the same sets of batches and whatnot. So there's the Strafe RGB, the K95 and K70 from Corsair, and then there's the Black Widow Chroma, the Black Widow Chroma Stealth, and then I showed the Deathstalker Chroma. This isn't a mechanical keyboard, so if you want a mechanical keyboard, I can just close this.
Yeah, I would close that.
Okay. And then I have two side accessories that aren't keyboards but are keypads that use Cherry MX switches, the Orb Weaver Chroma and the Orb Weaver Chroma Stealth. I'll explain that later when I talk about the... When I talk about the K95, I'll explain the Orb Weaver alongside it. And then
I used to use those when I played WoW. The kind of
the pads. Like, did you have like a Logitech G13 or something like that?
I had like a Nostromo. Is what I used.
Okay. And then for the keyboard, there's the G910 Orion Spark, which is I'll explain the differences between each of them and why each of them would be appealing to you. So, between the K70 and the Strafe, they're pretty much the same keyboards, aside from like the font is different. Like, let me see if I can go here and open this image preview, and then go here and open a forward image preview. Is there like there? So, there's the K70, there's the Strafe. There they are left to right. So let me move this over here, And let me move this there. See?
Mm-hmm.
That's the K70, that's the Strafe. They're pretty much the same keyboard functionally, but as you can tell, the font's different. And even though the font looks huge on the Strafe, it's not as big in person. It doesn't look like an old person's keyboard with large letters so they can read it.
Yeah.
But there's a few subtle differences, like you can see the Strafe is slightly more edgy in terms of its cosmetic design, I think is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
There were pause buttons. There were individual like stop, start, back, forward buttons on the K70 RGB, and they replaced that. I mean, they got rid of that and the volume wheel and moved that into function keys, and then they got rid of the. They put a individual Windows lock button. They moved the individual Windows lock button and the brightness keys to the side. So the Strafe has less hardware buttons on it, but if you're not like constantly watching videos, you're probably not going to care that you don't have a stop button, a play button, and a back and forward button. But a volume wheel might be convenient to you if you're constantly like altering your volume depending on what content you watch.
Yeah.
So between those two, but the benefit that the Strafe has. Between those two, the benefit that the K70 has is the hardware buttons. But the benefit that the Strafe has is that it has better looking lights. For the most part, they're probably the same lights. I haven't seen a K70 RGB in person since the new sales logo has been what they've been using on all their products. But the reason the Strafe will have better looking lights is because there's a white backplate behind the keycaps. So let me see this white right here.
Hold on. Okay, the white right there. All right.
Yeah. You should be looking at this anyway because I have it side by side. So you're able to see the comparisons. So you can see exactly what I'm talking about. There's a white backplate under these keycaps. And the LEDs from the keycaps are going to be reflecting off this white backplate. And it's going to create an illusion of brighter lights relative to the K70, which has no white backplate under the keycaps.
Okay, that makes sense.
So overall, the benefit of the Strafe is that it has brighter lights, relatively speaking. Like it has the illusion of brighter lights, and then the K70's advantage is the media keys and volume wheel. So but that isn't to say that the LEDs are ugly on the K70. They still shine directly into the letters. They just won't reflect and look as flush in between the keys. And you could probably look up videos of that. I might link you some if they're like from the same channel, so they have like the same camera, so there's a relatively equal point of comparison.
Yeah.
So
now those big ass wrist guards that are on the keyboards, am I able to take those off?
yeah, they don't come on them by the default, but you can put them on if you want.
Okay, cool. Just making sure.
Yeah. So I covered the Strafe in K70 there. So this gets most of the explanations out of the way that I'm going to explain for the rest of the keyboards as well. The K95 is literally... Or is there no picture gallery? Okay, I can just open this. There is no difference between the K70 and the K95, aside from the fact that the K95 has these 18 macro keys. Like, you look at them side by side, they have the 18 macro keys. And, what's this? What are these buttons? Let me see if I can go to the product page and find out. It says MR, M1, M2, M3. So, okay, and those keys, those buttons right there, MR, M1, M2, M3, are for these 18 macro buttons, where M1, M2, M3 are 3 separate profiles. So you essentially have 52 macros.
Okay.
But you can't use a macro from macro profile 1 and a macro from macro profile 2 or 3 at the same time.
Yeah. So
you're limited to using 18 out of your 52 macros at any given point, and you have to like configure it in a way where you would want. So say this is convenient for say you have like 3 different classes in an MMO. You log off of your I don't know, gunslinger class, which you have macros for M1, and you log into your warrior class, which you have macros for on M2. You just press the M2 button and you're good. But the thing about the K70 and K95, I don't know why they didn't put these buttons on the K70, is because all the RGB keyboards are fully programmable, except for the Logitech one. Which means that you can, even if you don't have these macro keys, you can configure any of the buttons on this keyboard to do whatever you want. Like, you could configure the Z button to actually input A, S, D, F, G, or something like that, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So every time you press Z, it doesn't give you a Z, it gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
And that stuff is very easy to learn, so you won't have to worry about that. And there's also a lot of different RGB LED effects. Now that's extremely complex on the Corsair keyboards in particular. They have like a 140-page manual that explains literally everything you could do with the keyboard's LEDs, so you know how you would want to combine them. But chances are, all of the pre-configured LED effects are going to be fine for you. So you won't need to worry about that unless you really get into customizing the LEDs and setting up profiles. Who knows, maybe you won't even want LEDs, and I'll get into that later. So yeah, that's the Corsair selection of keyboards. So let's go to the Razer stuff. So you already used Tyler's Black Widow Chroma.
Yeah.
But you haven't used his Black Widow Chroma Stealth.
Nope.
Well, he doesn't have one. But what I meant to say there was that the difference between the Black Widow Chroma and the Black Widow Chroma Stealth, like if I open the image previews, they're the same keyboard. It's the same picture that they're using. But the Chroma has clicky keys, which means that you hear a clicking noise when you actuate the key.
Yeah.
But the Stealth one is just a bump. You don't hear anything when you actuate the key. You just feel a bump when you actuate the key. So they're quieter. And I know you were telling me that you wanted a quieter mechanical keyboard yesterday. So chances are you're not going to want the Chroma, I assume. You're going to want the Chroma Stealth if you end up choosing this keyboard. So we can close that. And we can close the Orb Weaver and leave the Stealth open. So this is a lot more expensive because of how Razer's configured it. Like, the Black Widow Chroma comes with 5 macros already. That are about this, like programming them is very similar to how you would program these 18 keys on the K95.
Okay.
But the Orb Weaver is an additional 20 buttons. That is like suited for your hand, and then there's like it's ergonomically shaped. Now, obviously, some people still don't like it. I personally couldn't reach the back end of buttons with my hand. But they rested on these 3 just fine, and they reached for these 5 just fine. And then there's like another button here, and then there's like a thumbstick. This is a thumbstick, by the way, not a D-pad. It's kind of like it's kind of like a fight pad. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like the Xbox 360 or PS3 controllers that they move the buttons so there's 6 on the side, and the D-pad is a little different from the OEM controller. That's what it's like to control. Like, you still have to push it in various directions, but it's still easy to press down on like a D-pad would. That's how that works. And it also has RGB lighting and all that stuff. So if you think that would be cooler, there's that option. And then there's the Orion Spark. And the disadvantages the Orion Spark has is that it's not fully programmable. You can only program these G keys, and you can only program this G1 through G5 here, and this G6 through G9 here. But the LED customization is about similar to the Black Widows in terms of everything you can do with it. But also it has I think, relative to Razer and Corsair, a significantly edgier design. And then it has these keycaps, which I've heard feel absolutely terrible, but some people really like them. Depending on whether you liked the keycaps on these or not, you can probably go to a Best Buy and like feel this keyboard. You could feel all of these keyboards at a Best Buy. You could get these, which are cylindrical, which are the standard shape for keycaps. So if you end up like using a Corsair keyboard, using a Razer keyboard, and then using a Logitech keyboard, and you find out that you like the feel of the switches that the Logitech keyboard uses the most, but you don't like the way the keycaps feel, you can buy the keyboard and you can buy the keycaps. Now, this keyboard isn't $180. Like, I can go on Amazon and type in G910, and it'll be. That's not how much it costs. That's Amazon being dumb. You can buy it used like new from a fulfillment by Amazon resale for $120.
Okay.
So you can get it much cheaper. You can get all of these things much cheaper, except for probably the Orb Weaver, and the K95.
Okay.
All of these things you can probably find used at a reduced price if you wanted to buy that way. So yeah. So between those three keyboards, it's like I explained the majority of how all three of them work in the Corsair spot, but they all have RGB LEDs, and the RGB LEDs can be complex, and the Corsair ones have the most complexity to them. But the cons between each, I would say, is that I wouldn't actually say there are cons with the Corsair keyboards. And that's mostly because people really like Cherry MX switches. But if, say, you were to prefer the feeling of the Chroma switches, or if you preferred the feeling of the Logitech Roamer G switches, which are made with Omron, which makes like fight pad switches and rhythm game switches for arcade cabinets. So they're not like an obscure company whatsoever. These keycaps, Franker Z. These keycaps would be if you preferred these switches, you would consider the Cherry MX switches to be a disadvantage in that sense. So, yeah. The reason I covered the keyboards first is because the keyboard is the largest peripheral between the three, which means that the keyboard would be like the foundation of like what brands you would want to branch out to. But obviously, there's going to be deal breakers, like if the headset sucks, or if one has a particularly good headset, you might want to go with that. So like, I know that between all of them, the Corsair keyboards are essentially flawless RGB keyboards, unless you wanted something a little sturdier. I know you wanted something sturdier than the Black Widow Chroma, so Razer might be out of the option in that sense. But there isn't really any objective flaws with the KRGB stuff, and there aren't really any objective flaws with the G910 now that they have cylindrical keycaps. But from what I've heard, even though the Corsair keyboard is considered objectively flawless, the G633 headset is considered the best between the Razer headset that's RGB and the Corsair headset that's RGB. So this is the G633 and this is the G933. The G933 is just a wireless G633.
Okay.
And then between the mice, Logitech has the best mice, I would say, but there isn't anything objectively wrong with the Death Adder Chroma or the Naga Epic Chroma or the Naga Chroma or any of the other RGB mice they have. But in terms of like sensor performance, people really like the Death Adder. People really like the G303, which is the RGB mouse that Logitech offers.
Okay.
People really like that mouse, and then people really like the Death Adder Chroma. Those are like, and I've used both of them, and they both have really good sensors that are like, any sensor performance issues are going to be negligible. But obviously, we've heard everyone's horror stories about Death Adders just dying.
Yeah.
But I already talked to Tyler yesterday about how, for whatever reason, there is a possibility that people might mistreat their stuff, that people might think that something that's intentional design is a flaw. Because the thing about the Death Adder is that I've never heard of people's stories where the sensor dies, and I've never heard of the LED dying. But I've heard of buttons dying, which is like the problem that a lot of people have with the mouse. But I personally owned a Death Adder for 4 or 5 months, and I didn't have any problems with buttons.
Hmm.
So, but considering that people are saying that the buttons are dying, and I've never heard of a single report of the G303's buttons dying, um, obviously you'd want to avert the risk and go with Logitech.
Hmm.
So, explaining through that reasoning, if you feel that the risk is too high, just on the fact that there are dysfunctional units out there at all, I would recommend staying away from Razer based on the input that you've given me, that you feel the keyboard isn't the best build quality, and then the input that I gave, which is that the buttons can die
Yeah.
on the Death Adder. But I haven't heard anything bad about the Naga in terms of buttons dying. So there's still that option as well if you want the Black Widow. So I guess we can like stray away from the Death Adder, and then talk about the Mamba, the Diamondback, and the Naga, which are their three mice. The only difference between them is the shape. They all have the same sensor, and then like the buttons. Now I've heard the sensor performance on these mice are really good. They're better than laser sensors, but I haven't been able to confirm that they are objectively one-to-one in terms of like acceleration. You know how acceleration works, right?
Nope.
Mouse acceleration is where if you move your mouse faster, the cursor moves exponentially faster. So like, if you moved your mouse at what would appear on a cursor to be 200 pixels a second,
Mm-hmm.
and then you moved it twice as fast, your mouse cursor will move more than twice as fast.
Okay.
Most people normally turn this stuff off because they want muscle memory to be as reliable as possible, and that is what most people do. So I haven't been able to get objective confirmation that the sensors that Razer is using in their new mice, like these 5G laser sensors, whatever they are, have no acceleration. So if you want to avoid acceleration, I would also recommend staying with these mice, staying away from these mice. In which case, I would just recommend staying away from Razer altogether, because I can't recommend Razer's headsets for the life of me because of the competition.
Okay.
So, do you think that that's something that you would want to stay away from?
Yeah.
Okay. So, no acceleration, no keyboard, no orb weaver, none of that stuff. So now we're between Corsair and Logitech with the RGB keyboards. Actually, no, not the RGB keyboards, the RGB mice and headsets. So both of these companies have really good mice that are RGB and really good headsets that are RGB.
Okay.
So let me go into that in a second. Products, mice, products, headsets, and speakers. So Corsair has a wide selection of mice. The M65s are laser, so you want to avoid that. The Saber Laser's laser, so you want to avoid that. The Scimitar, Qatar, and Saber Optical are all optical sensors, so these are the ones that we're going to be looking at.
Okay.
Do you use side buttons
Yes.
on a mouse?
Yes.
Okay, so you're not going to want the Qatar because it doesn't have side buttons. Do you like this yellow accent on that?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like yellow a lot. I think yellow. We were talking about aesthetics yesterday. Yellow and black are some of my favorites.
Okay, so I might actually end up closing the Logitech then, because Corsair also has a wireless yellow headset.
Oh, that works out perfectly.
So it's like you have or they have a black wired headset that you can put a yellow LED on, which I feel would be less obnoxious.
Mhm.
Like there's the yellow wireless one, and then there's the black wired one.
I like the yellow one.
Okay. So there's that. So what you could do is have the yellow void wireless. Keep in mind that this headset, it costs like $130, I think, by most retailers, not $160. So you would have that, and then you'd have the Scimitar, and then you'd have the Saber has less buttons. It's not an MMO mouse, so you know, but it has two buttons on the side of the left click. The only problem I had with the Saber is that personally I had no clue how to hold it, because this thing right here
Yeah.
pushes my pinky up.
Okay.
And you know how ambidextrous mice, your ring finger can stick over your pinky finger, and it's just like an annoying feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
This mouse does that to me.
Okay.
So if that bothers you, we can stay away from that.
Yeah,
So then, like, your Corsair peripheral set would be the Void wireless, the Scimitar RGB, and the Strafe RGB. Actually, no, we didn't decide between the Strafe, the K70, and the K95.
Mhm.
Do you want a volume wheel?
That's what I was thinking of. I'm. I don't know, because the extra buttons sound convenient, but I like the idea of that. What was like the white light kind of
Like the light
back
reflecting off of
display.
the white on the.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not going to look bad regardless. So, you
Yeah,
know.
I prob the buttons sound really convenient. I'd probably wind up going with the K70,
Well, it's actually the K95. Because it's
the
like,
K95.
yeah, like the K70 has the wheel, and then the K95 has side buttons.
Oh, okay, that's right. Those are the ones with all the. That's even better. The shit tons of macros.
Okay, yeah. So if you have a scimitar and then this, you'll have a ton of macros, and chances are you might not even use your keyboard when you game, because you'll like bind your mouse to the numpad, and then you'll bind your macros to the keyboard, which
Okay.
means that chances are you might actually not even use this entire part of the keyboard when you play games,
Okay.
because you have so many macros. But that can be like your set. Let me close this. The Void wireless, the Scimitar RGB, and the K95 RGB.
Okay.
So we can go with that. Um, so that's your Corsair peripheral set option. It's $160. Well, it's actually like $130, and this is $80 right now. So
Yeah.
that's 210, and then this keyboard costs a lot of money, because it's a K95. Like all those macros, plus all those switches, plus all those additional LEDs are kind of paying for the cost. But on
Yeah.
Newegg, it's $160. But the problem with Newegg that a lot of people don't like is that let me see if I can switch this. I can't. Um, the problem that a lot of people had with another pro with the Strafe is that they have the Cherry MX silent switches, which are basically padded Cherry MX red switches.
Okay.
But chances are reds and browns are also quieter. But they're not as quiet as sounds, but they're definitely quieter than blues. So it's like a diminishing return. Blues are really loud. Browns and reds are pretty quiet, and silents are pretty more quiet. Like,
Yeah.
if I were to like make it how loud the switches are, Cherry MX blues are like if Cherry MX blues are 10, then Cherry MX reds and browns are like 6s, and the Cherry MX silents are like 4s.
Okay.
If we were to, and rubber domes would be 1s.
Okay.
So it's like a diminishing return in that sense.
Yeah.
So if you think the macros are worth, then I would go with that.
Yeah.
The thing about the mechanical keyboards in particular is that Corsair has changed their logo 3 times with this keyboard set, which means that it's basically RNG what logo you're gonna get on your keyboard, with a heavy favor towards the tramp stamp logo. That's what people call it.
Oh god.
Even though in reality it's 2 cutlasses. That's what those swords are. But it looks like I'm gonna eat my words, because they have a separate page for the new
Yeah.
logo.
I would want the ship sales logo or whatever.
Yeah. So what that means is that if you buy everything at like the retail price, which is lower than these MSRPs, you're gonna be paying like 130 for the headset, around 80 for the keyboard. I mean for the mouse. And around 160 for the keyboard. So that's like $370. That's the total ish of everything.
Okay.
Now, between switches, brown Cherry MX switches are like razor oranges, where they provide a bump when you actuate. But then reds, which are considered the best for gaming, but honestly browns are about the same, just with a bump. There's no bump. You can't tell when you actuate it. But they're the quickest response to double tapping, because the springs that push the keyboard back up don't have to go through a bump on the Cherry MX Brown switch. But this is a very slight nuance that you're probably not going to need to worry about unless you like play games competitively, because the difference in time between like how much a Cherry MX brown switch will rebound and a Cherry MX red switch is like less than a millisecond. Like you'd have to record a camera at like 240 FPS and then slow it down to quarter speed at 60 FPS to be able to see the red Cherry MX switch rebound faster. So it's like negligible, basically.
Okay.
So in that sense, it's more of a matter of whether you want to feel the bump or not.
I think I kind of want to feel the bump a little bit.
Okay, so we can go with Cherry MX Browns there, which costs the same. So we don't have to worry about that. Frank or Z. So that's like the price difference. I mean, that's the total cost of everything, about $370. And then the Logitech stuff. Let's talk about the mice. So the G303 is cheaper than $70. It's like $40 to $60 depending on the sale. And then there's the G633 and G933.
Okay.
Would you want a wireless or a wired headset? Keep in mind that the wired headset has like a 10-foot cord.
I'd probably go with the wireless.
Okay.
Well, I guess it doesn't really matter, to be honest.
Yeah, it really doesn't. But the yellow Corsair headset only comes wireless.
Okay.
Also keep in mind that I've heard that the RGB LEDs on the wireless headset eat the battery alive. So if you want, you can turn it off, turn the LEDs on it off. Or you could like lower the brightness or keep it a solid color. I don't know if keeping it a solid color uses less battery than spectrum cycling, but you can figure that out on your own if you end up getting it.
Yeah.
So let's see. Where's the G303? I guess I closed it by accident. So the Logitech peripheral set is the G910. Where is it? Did I close the keyboard page too? So the set's the G910, the G303.
I'm pretty sure my brother has the G910.
Yeah?
My brother uses Logitech stuff, and I really don't like the way it feels.
You don't?
No.
Okay. So we can take out the Logitech stuff. Okay, so we know what you want then. In terms of RGB LEDs, which is the Corsair peripheral set. We have a winner. Personally, I'd be fine with a Logitech set or a Corsair set because I like the feel of Roamer Gs. But they're not like preferable over the Cherry MX switches, but neither are the Cherry MX switches. They're about even to me. So, anyway, your second option, aside from RGB LEDs that I recommend, is no LEDs, no software. So, basically plug and play stuff. And this won't get very complicated because I already know what to recommend you. Do you use an ergonomic mouse or an ambidextrous mouse?
I believe ergonomic.
Ambidextrous mice are symmetrical.
No, ergonomic.
Okay. And have you used an ambidextrous mouse?
I don't know, to be honest.
Let me... This is an example of an ambidextrous mouse.
Oh,
you can use
yeah,
it with your left or right hand.
I've used one of those before. I don't like the way they feel.
You don't like ambidextrous? Okay.
No.
The Scimitar, in my opinion, is the best feeling ergonomic mouse. Like, I'm using it right now.
Okay.
It feels amazing. It feels amazing, dude. Anyway, so the mouse that I recommend, if you're going to go with an ergonomic feel, is either the Naos 7000, the Mionix Naos 7000. Actually, no. These use drivers. I forgot about that. But I think you can save it to the device memory. Either way, a lot of people use a lot of people use both of these mice,
Mhm.
and drivers don't seem to bother them. The only thing the drivers do is let you program the LEDs
Okay.
and the side buttons and the like middle buttons that are right here, and the scroll wheel click. That's what it lets you customize. So this mouse is like, it has a individual. I can't point my mouse over here. I know what to do. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Can you see my mouse moving?
Yeah.
Okay. So like you can see like the
X and
um,
Y axes.
yeah, okay. This area right here
Mhm.
is a a ring finger rest. And this
Yeah.
area right here is a pinky finger rest. So what you would effectively be doing is having your ring finger here, and then your pinky finger wraps around here so they don't interfere with each other whatsoever.
Mhm.
So you have like a space for all 5 of your fingers. Like if we take a look from this angle, your thumb's going to be here, your index is going to be here, your middle's going to be here, your ring is
Okay.
going to be here, and your pinky's going to be here. So it's like your hands spread out. And a lot of people consider that to be very comfortable. And this mouse also happens to have a very well-performing sensor.
Mhm.
And then the Meonix caster is a little more subtle, where from this angle, your thumb is going to be here, your index, your middle, your ring will be here,
Mhm.
and your pinky will be here. Because if you look at it from this angle, does it have from this angle? There's a ring finger rest right here that's a little less subtle than this.
Mhm.
And then there's a pinky rest right here that's a little less subtle than, a little more subtle than this.
Mhm.
But so like if you're somebody who realizes that that this mouse would pigeonhole you into a certain grip that you don't enjoy, I might recommend this mouse instead. So do you think that would be more comfortable for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Now the other mouse that I would recommend, since you prefer ergonomic mice, is a mouse by Zowie. Because a lot of the other companies that make really good sensors with ambidextrous mice, for some reason, seem to fall flat with their ergonomic mice. In my opinion, like the SteelSeries Rival, a lot of people don't like how long the mouse is and stuff like that. Rockat's ergonomic mice are older, so they don't have as many features and use drivers, so it's like they don't compete with the feature sets. So what's left is Zowie. Zowie's mice are very popular because they don't use any software. You plug them in and they work. So what I would have to do here is show you these mice. Would you prefer a larger mouse or a smaller mouse?
I
Not larger relative to what you're holding, but in the sense that like, would you rather, like, do you move your mouse with like the tips of your fingers? So you would prefer like having some room for the mouse to go into your palm, or do you grip it with your palm and move it with your wrist?
kind of grip it with my palm and move it with my wrist.
Okay, so chances are you're going to enjoy the feel of larger mice more.
Mhm.
And I think that it's the ECA one, the EC1A. Okay, so the EC1. I believe it's Hiko that uses, or it might be JW. I don't remember. This is weird advertising because I don't like doing this stuff. But one of them uses a Zowie FK1. And the thing that's so popular about Zowie mice is that they use the sensors. They don't modify the sensors whatsoever. So they operate natively. They're considered to have one of the best tracking performances out there. And they're considered to be the most basic. Like the design is simple, as you can see. And the design is simple, and it doesn't use software, which means that there's less, like a lot of people consider things that you install on your computer in order for other things to work, like bloatware, because they don't want all that stuff running. So that's like the benefit of running that mouse. So like your options, if you end up liking everything that I'm about to talk about more, are the Mionix caster and the EC1A.
Okay.
From looking at pictures, let me put this tab side by side. From looking at pictures, would you say that you prefer the do you think you would prefer the feel of the EC1A or the Mionix caster?
Probably the Mionix caster.
Okay.
That's the one on the right, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't know if you can tell, but the EC1A is shaped very much like a Death Adder.
Mhm.
So if you don't like how a Death Adder feels, you probably won't like this mouse
Yeah.
or holding it. Because the way this mouse works is that right here, your that's where your knuckle from your first finger is going to be, and that's like heavily raised up. And a lot of people prefer that because it keeps their hand up, which is more comfortable for their arm. But it's not that big of a deal, and this one's flatter in that sense. So if that would annoy you, then I would just recommend going with this mouse.
Mhm.
So in that case, your options are the scimitar or the caster. Keep in mind that the caster is not an MMO mouse.
I would use the scimitar for sure.
Okay. Then I don't think there are any because of the fact that MMO mice have to be programmed for the individual buttons.
Yeah.
There aren't going to be MMO mice that have no software.
Yeah.
So if you want MMO mice that bad, then you should just go with the Corsair peripheral set.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't even need to talk to you about like the rest. That's the rest, like the headsets that I would recommend, which would essentially be the HyperX Cloud and HyperX Cloud 2,
Mhm.
and the mice that I would recommend. I mean, and the keyboards that I would recommend, which are a lot. So that's good. We saved a lot. We saved time doing that.
Right.
So the system build, if I choose the headphones, and then go Corsair, and then wireless, yes. We use the Yellow Jacket edition. Put that in the cart, and then the keyboards. K95 RGB. Let's see, Corsair, Cherry MX Brown.
Now, what about okay, so the difference between the Cherry MX Brown and the red was just it's almost negligible, and the Cherry MX Brown I'm just gonna feel the return on the key a little bit more, right? Or the
No,
pump
you're
rather.
gonna feel the press more. Like you're going to feel a bump when you actuate the key, and it's not
Mhm.
like a strong bump. Like it won't stop you from being able to press the key. It's essentially feels the same as. Actually, no, it might not feel the same as blues. I don't know if you can feel. I've never used blues myself, so I don't know if you can feel blues when you actuate the key, um, or like on a Tyler's keyboard, which doesn't use blues, but it's the same design as blues.
Yeah. I think red technically has the better response time, right?
No, they have the same response time. It's just that because the reds are linear, the springs will rebound the switch very, 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 very slightly faster. To a negligible degree for most people.
And that would be like if you're trying to press the same key twice in a row for some reason.
Like if you're trying to rapid tap, and you're like really high APM, Cherry
Hmm.
MX Reds will benefit you.
And that's probably for somebody who's playing something more like what, StarCraft?
StarCraft. If you're playing a game like League of Legends where ping can influence how quickly a spell will cast, so
Hmm.
you have to spam keys to get the spell out as soon as possible. Stuff like, and you're like super tryhard with that stuff. Cherry MX Reds would be better.
I would probably go with the red then.
Okay. Um, so K95 RGB Cherry MX Reds. That's the new logo and that's the tramp stamp logo? It doesn't say it is. Newegg. What's going on?
Hmm.
Is that the old logo or the new logo? I'm trying to. Oh, these are K70s. Duh. Okay. And then 95. No, that doesn't. K95. So, backlit white. Okay, we can close that one. Okay, add. I was trying to find out which specific K95 was the one with the new logo.
Okay, definitely want the new logo.
And then the Corsair Scimitar RGB only comes in that color and that variant, so you don't need to worry about that. So the cheapest price for these are Newegg, and the cheapest price for the headset is apparently Best Buy. It might actually be a Best Buy exclusive.
Okay.
Which would mean that you have to pay for tax and shipping for this headset, which isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
You can look up reviews for this stuff too if you want. If you change your mind, you can let me know.
Okay, definitely.
Let's close all this stuff. So we selected the keyboard, mouse, and headset. Now we're good. Now the last things we have to talk about are the case and the CPU cooler. So you like yellow and black, right?
Yes, definitely.
So what I can do is look at motherboards, and I'll tie this back into the case and CPU cooler later. There's color options for like what you want, colors you want your motherboard to be. So I'm gonna click black and yellow, so you only see the black and yellow ones.
Okay.
And you can tell me if you like those more aesthetically than the all black one. This is the all black one. You see these pictures?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the all black one. And then this is a black and yellow one. Keep in mind that your GPU is going to cover this.
Okay.
This yellow part. And also the Titan X. The only available Titan X's are reference coolers.
Oh yeah, wait, I'm sorry, work is calling me. Give me 1 second.
All right.
Hello? Hey, Jennifer.
I'm going to mute. There. Okay, so I'm gonna go into select black and yellow, see what options there are. Sort by price. There's no Titan X's available, which is unfortunate. And to be honest, that's like the only option right there. This specific card if you wanted a black and yellow one. But even then, he's not going to see the side of the graphics card. Actually, no. I think there's a yellow accent there. But Newegg won't let me see because Newegg does an absolutely horrendous job with having these images load successfully. I'll just Google search for all this. Images. Okay, so yeah, there is a yellow accent on the side. So this would be like his only option, and that would be if he wants to save money off the Titan X, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend if he wants to have a streaming rig that will be able to stream 4K gameplay without like having crappy FPS. He's going to want a Titan X and possibly a second Titan X, because in the future, when 4K streaming becomes a thing, there's going to be a lot more AAA titles that are going to be using a lot more VRAM. It just keeps going up. So the Titan X is like the safe bet. That's the best way to explain it. Okay, welcome back. So the thing about the black and yellow motherboards, by the way, is that there's only one graphics card.
Oh, okay.
That is black and yellow, and it's not a Titan X, it's a 980 Ti. Keep in mind that this thing is a beast. If you can overclock this thing, and compared to an overclocked Titan X, it will outperform a Titan X in games, but to some extent. But it has 6 gigs of VRAM. And the thing about VRAM that makes it so important is that if you run out, you are going to be looking at like you're going to look at very, very significant FPS drops.
Okay.
The things that use VRAM the most are effects.
Okay.
Very special effects and textures. That's what uses the most VRAM. Um, so, but if you don't think that the bump down in VRAM is going to be worth it, say because you're going to want a 4K monitor in the future, you might want to spend more on a higher end, higher resolution monitor, and you don't want to run out of VRAM in like 2017, 2018,
Yeah.
then a Titan X, sticking with a Titan X might be a good idea.
I'd probably stick with the Titan X then.
And at the same time, a Titan X isn't going to look bad with a black and yellow motherboard either. You just want one with more black and yellow on it, like this, the
Yeah.
ASRock X99.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know, is this a motherboard that I have favorited? No, I don't. The only ones that I have favorited are these two, which don't have a ton of black and yellow on them.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can look up the motherboard tier list that I was looking at before, see if this motherboard is good. I have to go in 5 minutes.
No worries.
So, let's see. X99OC. Blue ASRock. MSI X9, ASRock X99 OC formula. Oh wait, is that it? Up here? OC formula? Okay, good. Okay, I can save that to favorites then. It's apparently a really good motherboard. So do you want this motherboard? Do you think it will look good?
Yeah, that looks pretty sick.
Okay, and then I'm gonna edit the case too.
Okay.
Here's a picture of it. So it's more like a goldish color.
That still looks pretty tight.
Okay, so I can add this to the part list. That will swap out the motherboards, and then memory I'm not gonna swap out. The case. Let's see if there's. I think the 780T comes in yellow. Hopefully it does.
I was gonna say, is there something like slightly more yellow as compared to gold? But the gold still looks cool. I was just curious.
I don't know. There's only like the rest of the stuff has like really subtle bits of yellow.
Okay.
Let me see if I can remove this, and then colors, black and yellow. Okay. Black and yellow 780T. This is literally the only case that's black and yellow. And that's what it looks like. Do you think...
No, I don't like that.
Okay. So
Looks
then
like
we
a
can
toaster.
So we can look with the we can stick with the case. Hold on, I need to refresh this. Keep in mind that the only thing that's going to be yellow is the motherboard.
Okay.
Which means that's going to be covered up by RAM, a CPU cooler, and a graphics card. Is that fine for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, let me close all this stuff. See all completed builds. See if I can find the case. This is the same like internal case as the 750D. This is that person's final build. That's disgusting. The color matching is 0 out of 10. Anyway, imagine if this was black.
Yeah.
And imagine if this was much smaller. So like the only things you'd be seeing on this motherboard are this area, and then like this area down here. You're not going to be seeing much else. Do you think that's worth it? For like, because the price difference is $80 between that motherboard and the last one I had.
Probably not. If we're only going to be seeing a little bit of it.
Okay. Then I can put that back in there. Also, the other thing you can do, this is the last thing I need to bring up, is that save as.
Wait, is the other one going to still be yellow though, or is it just going to be like a flat black?
It's gonna be flat black.
That's fine. I don't mind black at all.
Okay. So the last thing that I need to bring up is that if you want, you can also install LED strips, which can give your case a lighting effect.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna look up like this is what LED strips do to a case. These are LED fans.
Oh, that's sick.
But then these pictures aren't the best ever, but yeah. So let's see. You could also just have an all black case and get yellow LED strips, and then set like your RGB peripherals to be yellow.
Yeah.
Does that sound cool?
Yeah, that sounds pretty sick.
Okay, so let's go to Newegg. LED strip yellow. Okay, those aren't there. Another case that I could suggest, if you want, is an Ephruz. Let me show you it. I'm going to look up a review, and I hope I don't get sniped for this by YouTube. Actually, no, I can just look up Ephruz yellow. No, I can't. Okay, I'm gonna have to try and avoid getting sniped. So I'm gonna like mute this audio and then keep it paused. So you have the Ephruz has a button that lets you switch LED colors, and I know yellow is an option if I can find it. See if I can skip through. I know yellow's an option, but basically with this case, what you would end up... Actually, no. How many hard drives can it support inside? You can support 6 hard drives and 2 SSD brackets. So, yeah, okay, that's not bad. What you could end up doing here is that because the case comes with a 200mm fan in the front and a 140mm fan in the rear, and it supports, I believe, 420mm radius. Let me look this up again and go to Fantech's website. That specs, manual, English. This supports up to a 420 at the top. So you'd be able to mount the 140mm that comes on the top of this case on the bottom for more intake. And then you could get like a NZXT Kraken X61, which would actually result in you having white fans in your case. But if you install yellow LED strips from Fantech that are LEDs, you can plug them into the Lux and just press the button and it'll change the colors of all the LEDs. And Fantech has instructions for that. Does that sound cool to you?
Which option do you think is better?
I think if you really want yellow LEDs that bad, the Ephruz with the X61 isn't a bad idea, because even though you have white fans, there's going to be yellow lights reflecting off of it, and it's going to look yellower, if that makes sense.
I don't need it. It was just a thought.
It's just a cosmetic touch.
Yeah, exactly.
And the price is going to be about the same.
And the performance and everything's going to be about the same?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, might as well go with the LEDs then.
Okay, case. Lux. Add. And then CPU cooler. Kraken X61. Add. H110i remove. Keep in mind that this cooler also has an RGB LED that you can control through software. So you can make all that. You can make all of the LEDs yellow.
That's sick.
And then these LED strips. Let's see if I can find them. Keep in mind that these are about they're 1 meter long, which means that you probably want to buy 2 of them, I would think. One on the top and one on the bottom would be recommended, but try and keep it like out of the sight of the try to keep it out of the sight of the side panel window so it's not light directly shining into your eyes and it just looks like a light shining in the case.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can't find the LED strip on PC Part Picker, so I'm just going to overwrite this, and
Okay.
then we can stop there. So this is the link to your build that we've finished with, and then here's a link to the LED strips to put in the case. And I have to go now. So
Alright. But so that basically looks like that's it.
yep, that's it.
That sounds perfect, dude. I'm gonna have to work on this and send you a picture or something of the finished product.
Yep. All right.
Well,
I'll see you later.
yeah, dude. Good luck today.
Thank you.
Alright, see you later, buddy. Thank you.
Bye. So there you go. We did everything in 2 videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.